Hello, DawgNation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. One of my favorite times of the football season, the football week, is when we all come together and make our picks against the spread, looking at the biggest games of that particular week, obviously Georgia, and then whatever else happening around college football. All of it brought to you by our friends at R.S. Andrews, who've made this show so much fun for so many years. And as we roll into another season here in 2025, let me say hello to Dari Payrow right now, who, by the way, as we're recording this a little earlier in the week before its air date on Friday, unseasonably, I don't want to say chilly necessarily, but it's certainly cooler than it typically is. And our guy, Dari Payrow, is quite bundled up here, Dari. So unseasonable, I don't know if that means that people are already working on their heating systems and stuff like that for the winter, but either way, it's great to have you back for another season. And I hope you're as excited as I am about the run through the year. We love it here on Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews.
Yeah, glad to be back. It is a little chilly, August more than normal. My girls are wearing sweaters to school every day, but it's got that cool, crisp. It feels like an October weekend. You could smell it in the air. This is a great opening week to start with tons of games, and I'm bullish on the Dogs this year, probably more than most people.
Well, that is what I like to hear, and we'll certainly put our money where our mouth is on that here coming up. And of course, I'll remind everybody that all of this is brought to you today by R.S. Andrews, your choice for air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. All of that can be taken care of by our friends at R.S. Andrews. Now, in August, this is typically the time when I would say, so make sure your air conditioning is still ready to go because we've got hot weather on the way. I know it may not seem like that's true right now, but trust me when I tell you, we're going to have plenty of hot weather games before this early fall is done, and your AC is going to be working overdrive during all of that. So if you're afraid it might not make it, get some new life breathed into your old unit by getting your air conditioning tuned back up to factory fresh specs. R.S. Andrews can take care of all of that for you. And if you wonder why this show is called Go With The Flow, as it has been now for all of these years, because when you think about the AC and the vents, the water coming out of the shower head, and all of those things that R.S. Andrews keeps flowing around your house nice and good, well, that's what they're all about. So please find them online at rsandrews.com. Before we remind you of exactly how our game works here, let's also get a reminder of how it goes in 2024. We obviously pick the top games of the week each week for the year, and we keep track of how it's all going. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not quite so much. Let's go back and see what was in store for us in 2024. Obviously, that final week of games, you see that on the left and on the right side. Well, how about that? Old BA went 14 games over 500 for a full season a year ago. That probably does not portend great things for this upcoming year. We call that regression to the mean, gravitational pull back to the center. But you know what? We'll celebrate what was last season. Kaylee, Jeff, Connor, Dari, Mike after that. That was the story in 2024. But obviously, we'll wipe that off and start fresh and clean here for this new season. And of course, the way it's going to work in just a moment, the entire DawgNation team, Mike, Jeff, Connor, Kaylee, then me, will make our picks for all the big games against the spread. And after that, a consensus will be formed. And then we'll ask Dari Payrow from R.S. Andrews if he wants to go with the flow and join that consensus. And as we do all of that, we invite you to play along with us. We think it's a lot of fun to do. So without further ado, let's dive in for the first game of the 2025 season. We see the Georgia Bulldogs, fresh off an SEC championship and a trip to the college football playoff last year, although one that came to far too abrupt of an ending for the taste of most Georgia fans, playing host in the opener of the season against the Marshall Thundering Herd. New look for the Thundering Herd after former coach Charles Huff leaves at the end of last season to go take the Southern Miss job, and a whole host of new Thundering Herd players come into Huntington, West Virginia as well. Georgia, a massive favorite in this spot, 39.5 points right now. It is Georgia favored over Marshall by 39.5 points. And as we've done now for a good number of years, we'll start off with Mike Griffith. Mike, what do you want to do with Georgia favored by 39.5?
Well, Brandon, you can tell I've bought into the fire, passion, and energy that Kirby Smart's been selling. I've got my blue cap on, to try to bring some intensity to my picks this year, turn up the wick a little bit. I kind of feel like that this Bulldogs team has something to prove. There's been a lot of talk about first impressions. There's been a lot of talk about fast starts. And I'm well aware, I believe the number is 0-12-1 for Kirby Smart teams that are favored by this amount. And yet I think they're going to break that trend. I'm going to take the Dogs in this game, and I'm going to take them to cover impressively against the Marshall Thundering Herd.
So Mike's got Georgia, and he's got his blue cap on too, the FPE expression for Mike. Jeff, how about you? Big number. As Mike said, Dog's not great in this spot, typically speaking, but what do you think about this particular Saturday, 39.5?
Yeah, guys, big number. What do we know about Kirby Smart in openers? I think Mike just dropped the stat. As much as fast starts compels me to believe, maybe Georgia is up 25 at the half. But there's nothing about this game that benefits Georgia and Kirby Smart by beating Marshall by 50, by 40. I think the second half, you're going to see a lot of new faces. You're going to turn a lot of guys over. I think those new faces are going to give up a little bit of points. That's where the pick is in, and it is for Marshall. Give me those points in Marshall there.
Our first split decision of the season as we get things going here. Connor Riley, fresh off of vacation. We're been thrilled to have him back as the season begins here now. Connor, what about you? Georgia favored 39.5.
I think just about every Georgia fan would be thrilled with like a 52-14 win, and that's a Marshall cover. And as the numbers have been laid out, Georgia usually doesn't cover these games. And this is sort of the difference between the people that finish near the top of the standings and the people that finish near the bottom is, when BA gives us a big number like this, you got to not take the candy. And so I'm not going to take the candy this time, and I'm going to take Marshall plus the points here.
So a little bit of love for the Thundering Herd in the Jim Donnan Bowl right now. Marshall, a couple of picks. Kaylee Mansell, what about for you? You want to join the trend here and take Marshall with Georgia's known history against the big number?
I'm probably going to end up hating myself for this, but I'm going to eat the candy because Marshall might be one of the worst teams in all of Division I college football this year. No identity whatsoever. And it wouldn't surprise me for the starters to stay in a little bit longer than we anticipate, just so they get in the rhythm and the flow and building the connection of being together. There's only 2 games before Tennessee. I think that they're going to want to see those guys out there together a little bit more. But even when they bring in the backups, I think Georgia's backups are still better than any starter that Marshall's going to have. So I may be falling for the propaganda, but I'm going to eat the candy and I'm going to take Georgia.
So I, believe it or not, I'm also going to take Georgia here. And that's a surprise because one of the things we've talked about for years on this show, because we do pay attention to the trends, is how poorly Georgia does as a massive favorite at home in these kinds of non-conference games. Sometimes in SEC games is a big favorite, but certainly the sort of Marshall, Austin, P style games, it's going to play over the course of the next couple of weeks. That's just not a number that Georgia typically covers. In fact, it's almost been a rubber stamp. But here's the tricky thing. Trends are sort of true until they're not. And oftentimes it seems that a trend is due to come to an end right about the time that people notice it. And this week, for whatever reason, this trend that's existed and been true for quite some time has gotten a lot more attention this week than at any point in the past. And in this particular case, the reason why I do like Georgia is because of something that Kaylee touched on, and this is something we've talked about quite a bit. Obviously, none of us know if this is true, but it's my sneaking suspicion that Marshall is the worst team in FBS. I think when you look at a year in which the transfer portal was not really a robust crop of elite talented players, and Marshall is not going to get its pick of the litter from those transfers anyway, and there are now 62 brand new players on this Marshall team after Charles Huff left abruptly. You don't typically see Southern Miss as a destination job. That's a road that typically only runs one way, and it's usually out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. But Huff went there. Marshall had to cancel its bowl game a year ago. This speaks to what I would describe as a messy situation in Huntington right now. It is my hunch that Georgia then will be likely to cover this number because while they're only 86th in FPI FPI says it accounts for transfers. I don't know that it can account for this many transfers effectively. I just don't. This feels like the kind of game that Georgia might cover this number. Now, if you're dead set on betting a game, I'm going to tell you right now, there are far better games to bet than this. But for the purposes of for fun and for a contest, I'm actually going to take Georgia, surprisingly given my track record. I'm going to take Georgia minus the 39.5 here. The flow, though, Dari Payrow, is on the side of Marshall. Do you want to go with the flow and take Marshall plus the 39.5?
Well, it's a big number. Kirby doesn't cover these big numbers. I'm usually always taking them. In this game, I think he's going to try to get a lot of the young guys a lot of reps in this game because they need tape. They need to get better. It's one of his youngest teams, especially on defense starting. These guys are going to make mistakes, especially in the second half. And Marshall's covered its last 8 openers in a row. However, Marshall lost all their coaches. Their whole team had an exodus. There's only 3 returning players from that team that came back. I mean, I don't know how a team will get continuity and do anything. So I'm going to take Georgia to cover that number with the running game that'll just pound them in a wet day in Athens on Saturday.
Moving on to the next big game of the weekend, the one that's among the most anticipated opening week games in college football history. Defending national champion Ohio State gets set to play host to SEC runner-up last year, Texas. Of course, Ohio State also beat Texas in the college football playoff semifinal to thrust its way into the national championship game. Some change for the Buckeyes. There is a brand new quarterback, new coordinators, but still arguably the top offensive and defensive players in the country when it comes to Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. And, of course, for Texas, the debut as the full season starter anyway for quarterback Arch Manning. And, of course, Texas is the number 1 team in the country, according to both the AP and coaches poll, but they are a small underdog in this spot. The horseshoe on Saturday, Texas sees itself as a 2.5-point underdog at Ohio State. Mike, we go back to you. Buckeyes hosting the Longhorns. What do you think?
Well, it's the second game in a row for Texas against Ohio State. And, Steve Sarkisian's been down this road before when he was at Washington, finished one season with Boise State and started the next with those Broncos. I like Texas. I like the revenge factor, but more than anything, I'm bought in on Arch Manning. I think they have the better quarterback. He's actually played a little bit. Both these teams, obviously a transition, both had some transfers come into the program and some guys go to the NFL. So I think the pressure, believe it or not, on Ohio State playing at home, I'm going to go with the Longhorns and take the points.
Jeff Sentell, how about you? The number is Ohio State favored 2.5.
Well, I think everybody's already dropped this metaphor, but I'll do my first ever visual aid. In one hand, you got Mr. Goodbar. That's Arch Manning right there. So the other hand, you've got the cracker in the scarlet red. That's Julian Sayin. Both of these quarterbacks is kind of a what-if game. They could have been dogs. I think Manning kind of pondered it. I think Sayin at one point was going to go to Georgia. I know there's other facets of the ball game: defense, special teams, run game, all that stuff. I feel like the home game, and I feel like the better quarterback in this game is actually Julian Sayin. That's what I saw when those guys were coming up in recruits. I'm eating the scarlet candy, the Julian Sayin candy. I'm going to lay those points. Give me Ohio State.
I thought we were about to get an Uncle Herschel reference from Jeff Sentell there for a moment. So a little split decision once again between Mike and Jeff. Connor, how about for you?
So BA this week, he's given us 4 SEC teams, and it feels blasphemous to call Texas an SEC team, but they are technically one, going on the road this week. And I believe 2 of these teams are going to cover, and I believe that 2 of them are not. I don't think Texas is going to cover this spread against Ohio State. I know they are the underdog, so I think Ohio State is going to cover this number. I think this game means just a little bit more to Ohio State than it does Texas, given, yes, Ohio State wins the national championship last season, but they lost a ton of guys from that team, as Texas kind of did as well. And so the fact that this is at home, the fact that there's going to be, I think, a lot on Arch Manning going into this game, even though it's Julian Sayin's first start, I think there was significantly more attention and pressure on Arch I'll be interested in seeing how he handles it. But give me the Buckeyes -2.5 here.
So a little bit of love for Ohio State right now. What do you think about that, Kaylee Mansell?
Well, if we're doing the candy reference again, I prefer the crackle versus whatever else Jeff had, and I'm gonna take Ohio State. This is one of those games that you could make a case for either team, and you're not gonna feel great about it. But I'm looking at the fact that Arch Manning has no road starts. He's essentially starting with an entirely new offensive line, with the exception of one. This is a weird game time for Texas. It's at Ohio State. I actually like Julian saying for the Buckeyes. Regretfully, I'm gonna take Ohio State, but it could go either way.
So I will tell you, I think this is an incredibly difficult game to predict. It's the sort of thing you would expect to be true when number one faces number two to begin the season. And I've kind of gone round and round in my mind about what I think might happen here. Ultimately, I am going to land on Texas for a simple reason. I believe that opinions about Ohio State changed very quickly, very fast on the basis of a couple of outcomes. They win the semifinal game against Texas, go on to beat Notre Dame, they win the national championship, and suddenly folks forget that just prior to that, going into last year's playoff, Ohio State was viewed to be a team that had a bit of a big game problem. Long losing streak against its hated rival Michigan, some college football playoff disappointment prior to last season. By comparison, I know this sounds crazy, but I think you can make a case that over the course of the last 2 years, a more substantial data set, Texas is actually a more proven program than Ohio State is. Ohio State had the nice run in last year's playoff, but in 2023, Texas won at Alabama. That's a big win. It's the kind of game that feels similar to this. Last year, winning at Michigan. Once again, that's the kind of game that feels at least similar to this. And by the way, Ohio State winning against Michigan, not something that's been done a lot recently. I'm very scared to go against Jeremiah Smith in this game because for all the attention the quarterback's going to get, Smith is, I believe, by far the best player. I would also put a small flyer on the loser of this game to potentially win the national championship. I think there could be an overreaction, wrongly so, against whoever loses. But in terms of who's going to win this game on Saturday, I'll take Texas plus the points. I assume that means they also win straight up. I think over the course of the last two seasons, they're actually the more proven of these two teams. So I'll take Texas plus the 2.5. The flow, though, on the side of the reigning champs. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take Brutus the Buckeye?
It feels like one of those lines where Ohio State's going to eke out a cover, winning the game, maybe some questionable calls down the stretch that they get. I mean, if you look at the stats and trends, Ohio State's won their last 11 games in a row against non-conference opponents that play at Ohio State. Texas has lost 7 of its last 8 games as an underdog. Texas has failed to cover the spread in like its last 5 or 6 games against a top ranked team. So everything kind of points and leads to that. But I'm just going to go on my gut here, and I'm going to go with Arch Manning because I think he's the better quarterback today, not what potentially can be Jeff, but today, Arch Manning has got that it factor. I think he's going to carry it. I think he's going to showcase it in this game. I think this is going to be a coming out, hey, I can lead this team type of game. And then you're going to get the hype with Arch all year long from this game on. So I'll take Texas. I think they're going to win it outright. I think they may even win by double digits.
Another SEC team on the road in non-conference play this upcoming Saturday is the Alabama Crimson Tide. As year 2 begins for Kalen DeBoer, they get ready to take on the Florida State Seminoles. Now, Seminoles quarterback Tommy Castellanos has talked a lot during the offseason about what he believes is going to be a big Seminoles win. Odds makers certainly not agreeing with this right now. Florida State hosting Alabama, but doing so as a 13.5-point underdog. It's also a new era for Alabama at quarterback as they welcome in Ty Simpson, obviously in replacement of Jalen Milroe from a year ago, a guy that's won some admirers in Tuscaloosa after being on campus for a good number of years, finally getting his moment. He'll, much like Julian Sayin, throws to Jeremiah Smith. Simpson get a chance to throw to another heralded second-year wide receiver. That is Ryan Williams. Alabama, among the favorites in the SEC, one of the Three teams with the highest season win total at 9.5. Big favorite here against Florida State. The number is 13.5. Mike Griffith, we come to you as the Seminoles host the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, Brandon, I had a chance to ask Kalen DeBoer this week about bulletin board material. A lot of coaches kind of shrugged that off, but he said, no, there's a little something to that. And obviously, I think the Florida State quarterback said something about Nick Saban not being there to save him. You know, Alabama didn't need Nick Saban last year to have a very impressive start against Georgia. I like DeBoer's coaching staff. I like the Crimson Tide's offensive line. I don't believe that Florida State can recover. They still haven't recovered from the Georgia loss in the Orange Bowl, and I don't think they can recover from last season fast enough to get their feet underneath them to stay within the Crimson Tide. So give me the Crimson Tide, give those points to the Seminoles.
So Mike takes Alabama. Jeff, what about you?
Interesting here because there's a lot of ways this could play, but the quarterback dialogues, new guys, new faces, big bulletin board talk. I just can't get past the fact how awful Florida State was last year as a football team. Anything else you want to say about that game? I can't see them making a big enough leap to beat Alabama this weekend, even at home. Lay those points. Give me the Tide.
So a lot of love for Alabama right now. What about you, Connor Riley?
I pride myself and think of myself as a man of faith, and there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, and that'll be a home run. And we're talking about baseball here, not obviously football, which Thomas plays for Florida State. But, look, I kind of like Florida State. I don't think they're going to beat Alabama in this game, but I do think that there's enough there. Gus Malzahn is the most overqualified offensive coordinator in the country. He has no problem going in Alabama and making things tough on them in this game. I think that's a real upgrade for the Florida State program. And while I don't think it's going to be enough to win this game, 13.5 is a lot, especially at home for Florida State. So I like the Seminoles here and give me the points, even if I'm sweating late.
So Connor, I think he makes a great point about Gus Malzahn, takes Florida State, contrarian compared to the previous picks. What about you, Kaylee Mansell?
It's funny because you guys know that I'm the note taker. I'm the one that keeps track of all the picks. And as soon as Mike and Jeff took Bama, I immediately just wrote Florida State down for Connor because we knew he was going to go opposite if those two made the same pick. I'm going to ride with Mike and Jeff here. I think that Jeff's point was spot on. Like, considering what Florida State was last year, you cannot convince me that they take some massive leap forward. They're going to have to prove that in this game. So I'm going to take the safe pick here. I'm going to take Alabama because I do believe that the bulletin board material makes this game more personal. And those guys on Alabama's defense are going to do everything in their power to touch Thomas Castellanos on each snap. So I'm going to take Bama here.
So I used the word contrarian a moment ago. I am contrarian by nature. But here's the thing about contrarian thinking. If it's always contrarian, then it's no longer contrarian. Does that make sense? All of a sudden now it's conventional. And this is an example of that for me. I would feel like of all the picks we'll make this weekend, this is the simplest take for me. This is the most basic selection, but I just don't think Florida State's very good. Just 1-4 in their last 5 as an underdog. They are 4-3 in their last 7 against SEC teams against the spread, but this was always in the pre-Kalen DeBoer era the one thing you could rubber stamp Alabama for. They just laid waste to a non-conference opponent in week 1, usually in blowout fashion. That's been Florida State before. It was in the old Georgia Dome, if you want to go back many years ago. Last year, week 3 was the non-conference game for Alabama. They blow out Wisconsin. I think of Alabama as one of the best teams in the SEC. I think of Florida State right now as, even with Gus Malzahn, who I do think is a pretty good hire for them, I think of Florida State's kind of no better than a middle-of-the-pack ACC team. I hate to say it, and this is where it seems really simpy, I'd take Alabama as like a 3-touchdown favorite in this game. I think, to me, 13.5 looks like a bargain. I like Alabama by a lot. I just think it's a far better team, even on the road. I may live to regret it. Oftentimes, the simplest opinions in this situation prove to be wrong. But, Dari, I like Alabama a lot. That puts the flow on the side of Alabama, too. Do you want to go with the flow and take the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Bama's going to roll. I think there's going to be like a prison beatdown. I don't see any chance that Florida State has come close to keeping that anywhere near that point spread. Bama's gonna win by 20 something in this game. They are a good team. Florida State's not.
So that is about as simple as that's going to be on that. Shifting gears here to what I think might be the most fun game of the weekend, with all due respect to Texas and Ohio State, because I think the stakes for LSU Clemson are just far higher. LSU desperately wants a week 1 win, something that Brian Kelly's not been able to get. Clemson wants to prove it can do something other than win against ACC foes. They haven't done nearly as much of that lately, although this is a Dabo Swinney team with national championship pedigree and certainly a long line of college football playoff appearances in the recent past, and also back in the college football playoff a year ago, too. It's also, if you want to have some fun with it, the battle for the real Death Valley. Well, it's the Memorial Stadium in Clemson, South Carolina, known as Death Valley, that'll host this game with Clemson as a pretty big favorite here in excess of a field goal, 3.5 against LSU. Mike, we come back to you. Clemson hosts LSU. They are the favorite. What do you want to do in Tigers versus Tigers?
Yeah, I agree with you 100% about the urgency in this game, Brandon. I think both of these programs are desperate. You know, Brian Kelly's got to get that first game loss habit off his resume, and if not now, win for Dabo. I mean, they've got 3 or 4 potential first-round picks. I believe they lost their last home game last year against South Carolina, and because of that, I just can't imagine Clemson losing 2 games in a row in that state. It is a fierce stadium. It is, as much as LSU has amped up their personnel on defense with Whit Weeks coming into his own, local guy from around here in Georgia. I got to take the Clemson Tigers, the more experienced quarterback in Klubnik. Nussmeier had a little knee. LSU, I with the new guys, maybe later in the year an LSU win, but right now, give me Clemson to win this game and cover the spread.
Clemson favorite at home. Mike on their side. Jeff, what about you?
I guess there's 2 storylines you could go with this one. Is this the better days behind them, good old days bowl, or maybe the Cracker Barrel Bowl with things that think about the good old times of the past? 2 coaches in Brian Kelly and Dabo Swinney who look like their best days are in the rearview mirror. Or is it the audition for the number 1 overall draft pick between Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier? Here's what I like about this game. I think LSU has filled a lot of its holes. I think Brian Kelly desperately needs this game, and I'm going to take LSU in this one. I could say something silly like I like the Tigers, but I think Nussmeier has a signature win right now.
Split decision again between Mike and Jeff. Connor breaks the tie once again. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that Clemson was a 53-yard or 56-yard field goal against SMU away from not making the playoff last year. That's an SMU team that got destroyed by Penn State. Clemson last year went 0-3 against SEC teams. They lost to Texas, they lost to South Carolina, they lost to Georgia. They are fine beating up on those tomato cans in the weak ACC. It's a little bit different when an SEC team is across the line of scrimmage to them. I love Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's the best quarterback in college football. I like what this LSU team might be able to do this year. I like LSU, and I feel very confident about this pick. And if you're betting this pick in real life, don't even take the points. Just take LSU money line right there and go from there. I feel very confident that LSU is going to go in and find a way to win this game and finally win a week 1 game under Brian Kelly.
Kaylee, what do you think?
I'm going to stick with Connor and Jeff. I'm going to take LSU. I've been really high on them all off season long. Both teams have great quarterbacks, so I'm excited that we even get that good of quarterback play in week 1. But I feel like with LSU under Brian Kelly, they're so close. There's always just been one key essential piece that's been missing to get them to have that breakthrough. But this year they have the number 1 transfer portal class in all of college football. So a lot of those issues have been addressed. I think if there's ever been a time for Brian Kelly to take the week 1 game, it's now. There's a sense of urgency for that. So I'm going to take the LSU Tigers in this game.
There's conflicting data in this game as far as I'm concerned. LSU just 1-4 in its last 5 as an underdog. They're not in underdog spots very frequently, but sometimes they are. They are not covering in that situation as of late under Brian Kelly. And as has been pointed out, they're also 0-3 straight up in week 1 games, twice against Florida State, also against USC last season to begin years. That's clearly a problem too. But it's what Connor pointed out that I think is most relevant here. Clemson 0-3 against SEC teams last year. They're just 1-4 in their last 5 against the SEC, and winners just twice in their last 7 against SEC competition. In other words, they've been really good at beating ACC teams, and that's not nothing. That's something that Miami and Florida State don't do nearly enough. But when it's a step up in competition recently, Clemson has not been able to make that step up. It's the biggest difference between the Clemson teams now and the ones from the beginning of the decade that had been a fixture in the playoff and won a couple of national championships. It's what you do against the SEC and the teams that are perceived to be as good, if not better than you. Clemson doesn't do as much of that lately, and that's why on the road, I think LSU goes in and, as Connor said, not just covers the number, but perhaps wins the game. To be safe, I'll take it with just the points, but I think LSU probably wins the game too. So I will take LSU. Puts the flow on the side of LSU as well. Dari, you want to go with the flow and take LSU?
I mean, it kind of looks like that's what it seems and appears to be, right? Like, they're not getting all this hype. They're not the favorite to win this game. So this is like a perfect avenue that LSU actually wins a game on a season opener. It'd be their first one in 5 years or 6 years. I like Nussmeier. I think he's a much better quarterback than Klubenik. I like a lot of things with LSU. However, Brian Kelly's going to screw this up. He's going to find a way late in this game. He's going to get outcoached by Dabo. This is a tough place to go into. I don't care what conference team you are. This is at Clemson, where that place is going to be energized at night. Clemson's going to win this game. I'm going to take them to cover, but they are going to win this game. They're going to get the W at this game. I'm not going to overthink it. I like Clemson in this game, and I'm going to take them to cover, but I could see a scenario where they win by 3. But Clemson's going to get this done, and Brian Kelly's going to screw it up.
That is a very provocative opinion from Dari. I'll remind you, if you want to hear a pick on the big Sunday game coming out between Miami and Notre Dame, and don't forget, we've got college football throughout the entire weekend. I hope you'll check out the Friday edition of DawgNation Daily and our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. At the conclusion of that show, we'll give you our pick in that game, plus our best bets of the weekend beyond the biggest games that will count for our season-long standings. Also, one final pick to give you here as well on this show. And as you're watching the show, a game getting set to begin, just as we're perhaps coming to a close here, takes us to McLean Stadium on the banks of the Brazos River, as I like to say, as the Baylor Bears play host to the Auburn Tigers. Auburn, Hugh Freeze, the butt of many jokes this offseason. Odds makers not laughing, though. Auburn coming in as a 2.5-point road favorite at Baylor here for this Friday night. Mike Griffith, we come back to you. What do you want to do with Auburn favored on the road against a Baylor team that won 8 games a season ago?
Yeah, it's an intriguing matchup for sure when you think about Dave Aranda and what a mastermind he was at LSU as a defensive coordinator. Doesn't have the same caliber of players. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid that Auburn is as bad as they've sounded in their practices. I think Hugh Freeze has worked very hard to prepare his quarterback, and I think sometimes those scrimmage results can be misleading. I'm going to take Auburn in this game. I think this is a must-win for Hugh Freeze. I don't have, when I speak about Baylor, as you would say, Brandon, I don't speak with a very deep voice in terms of the talent that they have. So give me Auburn to win this game on the road and flex some of that SEC muscle.
Jeff, what about you? Auburn favored at Baylor on Friday night.
That's what we keep hearing all offseason. Auburn is better. The receivers are better. The energy is better. The big plays are better. Hugh Freeze figured out his slice, figured out his putting, all this stuff. I just don't see it. I need to see it. And I still see an Auburn team going on the road. Folks, the rewind machine says they lost to Vanderbilt at home last year. They lost to a bad Oklahoma team last year. Sure, I think Auburn star wide receiver, Mr. Coleman, is going to look like one of the best players in college football. I don't think it's enough to beat Baylor. Baylor is actually getting some candy. I like Baylor to win this game outright by 7 at home.
Kaylee, what about you? Baylor getting points at McLean Stadium on Friday night.
Are we skipping Connor?
Excuse me, apologize. Connor, how about for you?
The classic emotional hedge here. I want Baylor to win this game. I want Auburn to lose. I don't love the direction that Auburn is heading. And while, yes, they've added talent in the run-up and under Hugh Freeze, I don't believe they've established a winning culture. And they were finding ways last year to lose games that they should have won. It's not the Georgia or the Alabama games that bother me. It's the way they lost to Oklahoma. It's that they lost at home to Arkansas. It's that they lost to Vanderbilt last year. Those are the games you have to win if you're Hugh Freeze and you're going to turn things around. I like this Baylor team quite a bit. Sawyer Robertson is one of the better quarterbacks, not just in the Big 12, but in the country. There's some good talent there at Baylor. I'm picking Auburn here as a classic emotional hedge to cover the spread here because one of two things will happen. Either they don't cover the spread and I think they end up losing to Baylor, and that gets me what I actually want, or they end up covering the spread and I get to be right. So there's a very narrow window where like they win by 1 or 2 points, but give me Auburn here -2.5. And I actively hope that I'm wrong in that.
Kaylee, now it's your turn. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm going to take Auburn, but I believe it's because this is going to be a really pass-heavy offense for Auburn this year, especially with all of the wideouts that they have between Sam Coleman and bringing in Eric Singleton Jr. And Baylor's coach is one that prides himself on defensive schemes, but Baylor had the 94th ranked pass defense last year in college football, and they're essentially bringing that same group of guys back with the exception of maybe one. So just based on the numbers alone and what looks to be the strength of Auburn, I'm going to take Auburn in this game.
So I'm also going to take Auburn here too. And to give you a little bit of a window in my thought process, here's one of the things I just believe in life. If it seems like somebody knows something you don't, they probably do. We all have memories of Auburn losing a non-conference game to Cal last season, losing at Cal back in 2023. Auburn hasn't covered as a road favorite since 2023 when they won at Vanderbilt. We all know this. We know that Auburn has been laughed at multiple times during the offseason, usually because of some weird thing that Hugh Freeze has said. But guess what? Odds makers also have the internet. They have televisions. They know all of this stuff too. And if they're still making Auburn a favorite in this game, I'm not going to argue with them. I'm going to assume that Auburn's probably the right side. I honestly believe that, and it's been mentioned a couple times already, Auburn may have the SEC's best crop of wide receivers. I mean that legitimately. And I think that's a lot in a game like this. I don't really buy too much into they may play 3 quarterbacks and whatever. I don't put a lot into that. I think that Auburn is probably good enough to win this game around the margin that the odds makers are suggesting. Obviously need to be more than that. And I think that Auburn's probably a lot better, or at least some better, than a good portion of our audience believes. I think Auburn's the right side here. Dari, the flow is on Auburn. You want to go with the flow and take the Tigers.
I mean, I think this is going to be a really close game. But at the end of the day, I cannot invest any action towards Auburn until they show me something. And I just have more faith in Dave Aranda right now. And I think they're going to win the turnover battle in this game. And I think that's going to be the difference. I think Auburn's still going to have some fundamental issues of screwing themselves in games because I haven't seen anything that's turned that culture around with that team. And I think that carries over into this game because I think Dave Aranda is going to have a better scheme for it. And I think Baylor's offense is pretty explosive. I think it's not getting enough attention right now. I think they're going to be at the top of the Big 12 this year. The Robinson, their running back, is pretty explosive. I think he's one of the best running backs in all of college football. And so I think that's going to be the difference. It's going to be their offense, and they're going to end up with a couple more turnovers that they're going to get from Auburn, and they're going to end up winning and covering this game.
Yeah, Sawyer Robertson, also a quarterback a lot of people really like too. So good stuff there with that. I'll remind you, you'll be back in this same spot again next week to recap the picks we made this week. Also pick the next week's worth of games. All of it brought to you by R.S. Andrews. And speaking of R.S. Andrews, if you'll check out the Friday edition of DawgNation Daily at the conclusion of our video broadcast, it's called the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. We'll give you our official pick for Miami playing host on Sunday night to Notre Dame, the national runner-up from a year ago, and also our best bets from beyond just the big games, the deeper cuts, if you will. We'll give some of those to you as well. And in the meantime, check out R.S. Andrews online at rsandrews.com for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price is promised. If you have a plumbing emergency, water heater goes out, don't let it ruin your college football weekend. In many cases, R.S. Andrews can replace it for you the same day. So find them online at rsandrews.com. See you Friday on Go With The Flow for the Notre Dame Miami pick and the other best bets. And back here at the same time next week on behalf of everyone who puts it together for Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews.